The Veth had been killing for 3,000 years. No one remembered when they first appeared in the galaxy. No one remembered a time before their black ships blocked out the stars. They moved from system to system, planet to planet, and they took everything. They took resources. They took technology. They took people. And when they were done taking, they burned whatever remained. The galaxy had learned to be quiet. Civilizations that once dreamed of exploring the stars now hid in the shadows of their own worlds. They paid tribute. They bowed. They survived. This was the way of things. This was the only way. On the bridge of the Veth command ship, High Commander Voreth watched the planet below Gurn. The Orani had been a peaceful species. They had built beautiful cities of crystal and light. They had created art that made other species weep with joy. They had never harmed anyone. None of that mattered to the Veth. How many ships escaped? Voreth asked. His voice was cold, like metal scraping against stone. 12 transport vessels, his subordinate replied, carrying approximately 40,000 refugees. Hunt them down. Leave no survivors. This was not cruelty for its own sake. This was policy. The Veth had learned long ago that fear was the greatest weapon. If even one refugee escaped to tell their story, other species might feel sympathy. Sympathy could become solidarity. Solidarity could become resistance. So the Veth left no witnesses. They left no stories. They left only silence. Far across the galaxy, in a region of space that the Veth had never bothered to explore, a damaged ship drifted through the void. The Taiguk was not an impressive vessel. It was a human battleship, yes, but an old one. Its hull was scarred from 100 repairs. Its engines made sounds that worried the engineering crew. It had been sent on an exploration mission 18 months ago, and everything that could go wrong had gone wrong. Equipment failures, navigation errors, a collision with an asteroid field that had nearly torn the ship apart. Now they were limping home, 3 months away from Earth. Running low on supplies, and Hope. Captain Dowan stood on the bridge, staring at the star map. He was 53 years old. His hair had gone gray. His face carried the lines of a man who had seen too much. Before humanity had united under one government, he had fought in 3 wars. He had lost friends. He had taken lives. He had done things that still woke him up at night, but he had also learned something in those terrible years. He had learned that some things were worth fighting for, even when winning seemed impossible. Captain. He turned. Communications Officer Yuna was looking at her screen with a strange expression. She was young, only 26, with short black hair and eyes that seemed too old for her face. She had joined the crew straight out of the academy, eager to explore the stars. The last 18 months had worn that eagerness away. "What is it?" Dowan asked. "I'm picking up a signal. Very faint. It's a distress call." The bridge fell quiet. In 18 months of travel, they had encountered no other intelligent life. They had begun to wonder if humanity was alone in the universe. "Play it," Dowan said. The speakers crackled. And then the screaming began. It was not in any human language, but the ship's translation systems worked quickly. Words formed from the chaos. Desperate words. Dying words. "Please, anyone. They are killing us. Our cities are burning. Our children are dying. Please. We are the Orani of Keller Prime. Please. Someone help us. Anyone." The message repeated. Again and again. A loop of horror broadcast into the void. Yuna's hands were shaking. "Sir, I'm also picking up ship signatures. 17 large vessels. They match no known configuration in our database." First Officer GI stepped forward. She was 40 years old, calm and precise in everything she did. Some crew members found her cold. Do-hwan knew better. He knew that beneath that calm exterior was a mind that could solve any problem and a heart that cared deeply about her crew. The signal origin is 2 days away at maximum speed, GI reported. We could reach them. But Captain, we have no idea what we would be flying into. Our ship is damaged. Our weapons are at 60% capacity. Our shields, I know our condition, Do-hwan said quietly. He walked to the viewport and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were dying. Not humans, but people nonetheless. Beings with families. Beings with dreams. Beings who had done nothing wrong except exist in the path of something terrible. The logical choice was obvious. Turn away. Go home. Report the signal to Earth and let someone else deal with it. The Tagak was in no condition to fight. They had 412 crew members whose lives depended on reaching Earth. Safely. Logic said to turn away. Do-hwan thought about the wars he had fought. He thought about the times he had turned away from suffering because it was not his problem. He thought about how those choices had hollowed him out piece by piece until he barely recognized himself. Yuna, he said, can you boost that signal? Send it back toward Earth? Yes, sir. It will take months to reach them, but yes. Do it. Let them know what we found. He paused. And what we did about it? GI understood immediately. Captain, are you certain? We have families waiting for us. I know. Do-hwan turned to face his crew. I know what I'm asking. I know the odds. But I also know this. If we turn away now, if we go home and pretend we never heard that signal, we will have to live with that choice forever. Every one of us. The bridge was silent. I will not order anyone to come with me. If any crew member wishes to take an escape pod and wait for rescue, I will not stop them. But I am going to Keller Prime. I am going to do what I can. Because that is who I am. That is who humans are. No one moved toward the escape pod's navigation officer, Hana, a quiet woman who rarely spoke, looked up from her console. Course plotted, Captain. 2 days at maximum speed. Do-hwan nodded. Take us in. The Taeguk turned toward the distant screams, and 412 humans flew toward the impossible, because they could not imagine doing anything else. The Taeguk dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Keller system. For a moment, everything was quiet. The stars hung in the blackness like distant candles. The ship's systems hummed softly. The crew held their breath. Then the sensors came alive, and the breath turned to ice in their lungs. 17 ships. Each one was massive, black as coal, shaped like the bones of some ancient beast. They hung in orbit around a burning world, their weapons lighting up the darkness with flashes of terrible light. Below them, Keller Prime was dying. Entire continents glowed orange with fire. Oceans boiled into steam. Cities that had stood for 10,000 years were now nothing but ash. Chief Tactical Officer Taiwu stared at his screen. His face was pale. His hands moved across the controls, running calculations again and again, hoping the numbers would change. They did not change. Captain, he said, and his voice was steady only because he forced it to be. Their ships are twice our size. Their weapons are more powerful. Their shields are stronger. If we engage them directly, we will be destroyed in approximately 11 minutes. Do-hwan did not respond. He was watching the viewport, where small shapes were trying to escape the dying planet. Transport ships. Refugee vessels. Thousands of people packed into metal boxes, fleeing toward the stars. One by one, the Veth ships were picking them off. A flash of light. A silent explosion. 3,000 lives gone. Another flash. Another explosion. 5,000 more. They're killing everyone, Yuna whispered. Her voice cracked. They're not even taking prisoners. They're just killing everyone. GI stepped closer to the captain. Sir, we could try to evacuate some of the refugees. Use our shuttles to... They would destroy us before we saved 100 people, Do-hwan said quietly. And then they would destroy the 100 too. Then what do we do? Do-hwan was silent for a long moment. He watched another transport die. He watched the Veth ships move through the void like predators, patient and merciless. He thought about his crew, their families, their hopes for the future. Then he thought about the Urani, a species he had never met, a people he would never know. They had built something beautiful, and now it was being erased from existence. Soon, no one would remember they had ever lived, unless someone survived to tell their story. Yuna, Do-hwan said, open a channel. All frequencies. Make sure they hear us. Yuna's hands trembled as she worked the controls. Channel open, sir. Do-hwan straightened his uniform. He took a deep breath, and then he spoke. This is Captain Do-hwan of the Earth vessel Taeguk. I am addressing the fleet currently attacking Keller Prime. You will stop your attack immediately. You will withdraw from this system. You will allow the remaining refugees to escape. You have 5 minutes to comply. The bridge was completely silent. Everyone stared at the captain as if he had lost his mind. Perhaps he had. Perhaps that was the only explanation. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. The Veth ships continued their slaughter. The transports continued to die. Then a response came through. It was not words. It was laughter. A horrible sound, clicking and chittering, translated by the ship systems into something that humans could understand. It was the sound of absolute contempt. The sound of a predator amused by the squeaking of a mouse. Little ship, a voice said. The Veth commander. Little ship from a species we have never heard of. You threaten us? You, with your damaged hull and your weak weapons? We have conquered 1,000 worlds. We have crushed 1,000 species. You are nothing. Do-hwan smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had made peace with what was coming. You're right, he said. We are small. We are damaged. We are probably going to die here today. But we are not nothing. We are human. And we do not know how to turn away from suffering. The laughter stopped. What does that mean? The Veth commander asked. It means, Do-hwan said, that you have 4 minutes and 30 seconds to leave this system. And then we are going to show you what happens when you make humans angry. He cut the channel. The bridge exploded into activity. Taiwu began calculating firing solutions. Hana programmed evasive maneuvers. GI organized damage control teams. Everyone moved with purpose, with speed, with the desperate energy of people who knew they were about to fight for their lives. Do-hwan pressed the ship-wide communication button. His voice echoed through every corridor, every room, every corner of the Taeguk. All hands, this is the captain. In a few minutes, we will be engaging a hostile fleet. They outnumber us. They outgun us. By every reasonable measure, we should lose. But I want you to remember something. I want you to remember why we are here. We are here because someone called for help. We are here because we heard them screaming. We are here because being human means we cannot look away from evil. He paused. I cannot promise that we will survive. I cannot promise that we will win. But I can promise you this. Whatever happens today, we will not be forgotten. The story of what we do here will echo through the galaxy. And maybe, just maybe, it will inspire others to stand up too. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Sun-ho listened to the captain's words. He was 61 years old. His hair was gray. His hands were covered in oil and scars from 40 years of keeping ships running. He had served on a dozen vessels, survived a dozen disasters. He had always found a way. He looked at his engineering team. Young faces, scared faces, looking to him for answers. "Well," he said, cracking his knuckles, "you heard the captain. Let's give these bastards something to remember us by." He turned to his console and began to work. Safety protocols disappeared. Power limits vanished. The ship's weapons began to charge beyond their design specifications. Warning lights flashed. Alarms blared. Sun Ho ignored them all. On the bridge, Tai Wu watched his tactical display with wide eyes. "Sir, engineering is... They're pushing our weapons way past safe limits. If we fire like this, the cannons might explode." Do Hwan looked at the Veth fleet, now turning toward them. The largest ship, the flagship, was leading the approach. Its weapons were charging. "If we fire like normal, we won't scratch their paint," he said. "Sometimes the only way forward is through the fire." The 5 minutes expired. The Veth opened fire, and the Taiguk surged forward to meet them. The first Veth attack missed, not because the Veth gunners were bad. They were excellent. They had been trained for centuries. Their targeting systems were the most advanced in the known galaxy. They had never missed a target this large before, but the Taiguk was not where it was supposed to be. Hana's hands danced across the navigation console. She was not thinking anymore. She was feeling. Every movement of the ship was an extension of her body. She felt the Veth weapons charging. She felt the void shifting around her. And she moved the Taiguk through spaces that should have been too small, at speeds that should have been too fast. "How is she doing that?" Tai Wu muttered. "Don't question it," Ji replied. "Just shoot where she tells you to shoot." The Taiguk released its first wave of drones. They were small things, barely larger than a human. They had been designed for reconnaissance, not combat. But Sun Ho had spent the last 2 days modifying them. He had packed them with explosives. He had programmed them to be unpredictable. 50 drones scattered in 50 different directions. The Veth shields were designed to handle large attacks, concentrated fire. They were not designed for 50 tiny threats approaching from 50 different angles. The drones began to detonate against the Veth shields. Each explosion was small, but together they forced the Veth to spread their defensive power. Their shields flickered. Weak points appeared. Now, Doan ordered the Taiguk's modified cannons fired. Sun Ho had done something to those cannons that violated every engineering principle he had ever learned. He had removed the limiters that prevented overheating. He had rerouted power from the life support on 3 decks. He had adjusted the magnetic fields in ways that made no theoretical sense but somehow worked anyway. The plasma bolts that erupted from the Taiguk were 3 times more powerful than they should have been. They hit the Veth flagship at its weakest point, where the drones had forced the shields to thin. The first bolt cracked the shields. The second shattered them. The third tore through the hull like paper. The Veth flagship, a vessel that had conquered worlds, exploded. On every Veth ship, there was a moment of pure shock. This did not happen. This could not happen. They were the Veth. They were invincible. They had crushed 1,000 species. This single, damaged, tiny ship had just killed their commander. "Press the attack," Doan ordered. "Don't give them time to think." The Taiguk dove into the Veth formation. It was insane. It was suicidal. It was exactly the opposite of what any reasonable military commander would do. The Veth could not understand it. They had spent 3,000 years fighting species that behaved logically, species that retreated when outmatched, species that surrendered when beaten, species that valued survival above all else. Humans, it turned out, were not logical. The Taiguk weaved between the massive Veth ships, using their size against them. They could not fire on the human vessel without risking hitting each other. Their targeting systems, designed for enemies who stayed at safe distances, struggled to track something moving so close and so fast. GA coordinated the attack with cold precision. She watched the Veth movements, predicted their responses, and gave orders before the enemy even knew what they were going to do. It was like she could see the future. Target their engine sections, she commanded. They're slower to turn. They'll expose their vulnerable points when they try to track us. Taiwu fired again and again. His modified weapons were burning out one by one. Warning lights covered his console. He ignored them. Another Veth ship fell, its engines exploding in a chain reaction that tore the vessel apart. Then another then another Kobe. Dr. Myre worked frantically. The wounded were coming faster than she could treat them. Plasma burns, shrapnel wounds, broken bones from the violent maneuvers. Her team moved like a machine, patching people up and sending them back to their posts. A young crewman grabbed her arm. He was barely 20 years old. Half his face was burned. He should have been screaming in pain. "Am I going to make it, Doctor?" he asked. Myre looked into his eyes. She had learned, in her years of service, when to lie and when to tell the truth. "Yes," she said. "You're going to make it. But I need you to rest now." The young man smiled and closed his eyes. Myre turned to her assistant. "Keep him sedated. Don't let him see a mirror." She moved to the next patient. And the next. And the next. On the bridge, the battle continued. The Taigok was taking damage now. The Veth had adapted. They were learning to predict the human ship's movements. Their shots were getting closer. A direct hit tore through Deck 7. 15 crew members died instantly. Another hit crippled one of the main engines. The ship lurched. Alarms screamed. "Shields at 30%, Taiwu reported. "We've lost 4 cannons. Engine 2 is offline." Dawan gripped his command chair. Blood ran down his face from a cut on his forehead. He did not notice. How many enemy ships remain? 11. No, wait. 10. We just got another one. 10 against 1. Those were still terrible odds. But they were better than 17 against 1. "Keep fighting," Dawan said. "Every minute we survive, more refugees escape." He looked at the sensor display. The remaining Orani transports were fleeing toward the edge of the system. Some of them would make it. Some of them would survive to remember what happened here today. That was enough. That had to be enough. The Veth regrouped. They formed a new formation, surrounding the Taigok from all sides. There was no escape now. No clever maneuvers could save them. The Veth commander of the second largest ship opened the channel. "You have fought well," he said. "Better than any species we have encountered. But it is over now. Surrender, and we will make your deaths quick." Dawan laughed. It was a genuine laugh, full of something that might have been joy. "You still don't understand," he said. "We didn't come here to win. We came here to show you that you can bleed. And now the whole galaxy has seen it." He cut the channel. "All hands," he announced. "Prepare for ramming speed." The Taguk's remaining engine roared to life. And then, something impossible happened. The Veth ships began to move. But not toward the Taigok. They moved away. They turned. They accelerated toward the edge of the system. They were retreating. The bridge fell silent. No one moved. No one breathed. What's happening?" Yuna whispered. Taiwu stared at his sensors, unable to believe what they showed. "They're running," he said. "The Veth are running away." The ships that had conquered 1,000 worlds were fleeing from one damaged human vessel, because for the first time in 3,000 years, they had met something they could not understand, something that would not surrender, something that would not stop. humans. The Teddyguck drifted in the void like a wounded animal. Fires burned on 4 decks. The hull was breached in a dozen places. Emergency force fields flickered, the only thing keeping the vacuum from swallowing the crew. Power systems failed and restarted in an endless cycle of near-death. Captain Dowan sat in his command chair. A medic had wrapped a bandage around his head. She had told him he needed to rest. He had told her he would rest when he was dead. The bridge was quiet now. The alarms had been silenced. The only sound was the soft hum of the damaged life support, struggling to keep them alive. "Casualty report," Dowan said. His voice was hoarse. GI stood beside him. She had a deep cut on her arm, but she refused treatment until every other crew member had been seen. That was who she was. 63 dead, she said. The number hung in the air like a physical weight. 112 wounded. 34 critical. 63 names. 63 families who would receive the worst message of their lives. 63 people who had followed him into this impossible fight and would never go home. "Read me the names," Dowan said. "Sir, you need to read me the names." GI understood. She pulled up the list on her tablet and began to read. Each name was a person. Each name was a story that had ended too soon. Dowan listened to every single one, burning them into his memory. When she finished, he closed his eyes for a long moment. "They will be remembered," he said. "Earth will know what they did here. The whole galaxy will know." In the engine room, Sunho sat on the floor, surrounded by the wreckage of his beloved machines. His modifications had worked too well. 3 of the 4 main power systems were destroyed. The weapons were slag. The engines were held together by hope and emergency patches. His engineering team sat with him, exhausted beyond words. "Can we make it home?" a young engineer named Junho asked. Sunho looked at the damage. He did the calculations in his head. "Not without help," he admitted. "We can move, slowly. But Earth is 3 months away at our best speed. We have supplies for maybe 6 weeks. So we're going to die out here?" Sunho was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, that same stubborn smile that had carried him through 40 years of disasters. "I've been in worse situations," he said. It was a lie, but his team needed to hear it. "We'll figure something out. We always do." On the bridge, Yuna's console beeped. She stared at it, confused. "Captain," she said, "we're receiving a transmission. It's from the planet." "The planet?" I thought, "It's not from the surface. It's from one of the underground shelters." Some of the Orani survived. A face appeared on the main screen. It was not human. The Orani were tall, slender, with skin that shimmered like mother of pearl. Their eyes were large and dark, filled with an ancient wisdom. The Orani on the screen was female. Her face was streaked with tears that glowed faintly in the dim light of her shelter. Behind her, Dowan could see others. Hundreds of others. Survivors of the destruction. "You came," she said. Her voice was soft, musical, broken. "We sent our cry into the void, expecting nothing. Expecting death. And you came." Dowan struggled to his feet. It hurt to move. Everything hurt. But he would not meet this moment sitting down. "We heard you," he said simply. "We could not come. But why?" The Orani's voice cracked. "You owe us nothing. We have nothing to offer you. We didn't even know your species existed. Why would you risk everything for strangers?" It was a good question. The most important question, perhaps, in the entire galaxy. Yuna answered before Dowan could speak. She stepped forward, her young face fierce with something that was not anger, not pride, but something deeper. Because that's what humans do, she said. When we hear someone screaming for help, we go. Even when it's stupid. Even when it's hopeless. Even when everyone tells us we're going to die. We go. Because we know what it's like to suffer. And we can't bear to see others suffer alone. The Orani ambassador was silent for a long moment. Her tears continued to fall. The Veth have ruled this galaxy for 3,000 years, she said. They have conquered countless species. And no one ever fought back. No one ever even tried. Every civilization did the same calculation. They looked at the odds. They saw that victory was impossible. And they surrendered. She paused. But you did the calculation too. You saw the same impossible odds. And you fought anyway. Why? How? Dohan thought about the question. He thought about everything he had seen in his life. The wars, the suffering, the moments when giving up would have been so easy. Because sometimes, he said slowly, the odds don't matter. Sometimes, the only thing that matters is what kind of person you want to be. What kind of species you want to be. We chose to be the kind of people who stand up for others, even when we can't win. The Orani ambassador lowered her head. You have given us something precious today, she said. Not just our lives. You have given us hope. For 3,000 years, the galaxy has believed that the Veth cannot be stopped. Today, you proved that belief wrong. Today, you showed us that courage can exist in the universe. She looked up again, and her eyes were shining. We will repair your ship, she said. We will give you supplies. We will do everything in our power to help you return home. And we will tell your story. Every Orani who survives will carry the story of the humans who came to save us. We will tell it to our children. And their children. And their children's children. Doan felt something shift in his chest. Something warm. Something like the feeling he used to have long ago before the wars had hardened him. We would appreciate the help, he said. But you don't owe us anything. We did what anyone should do. We did what was right. The Orani smiled. It transformed her face, turning grief into something that almost looked like joy. That, she said, is exactly why we will never forget you. The communication ended. Doan sank back into his command chair. The bridge was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet now. Not the silence of exhaustion. The silence of people who had done something that mattered. You know, Gi said softly, they're going to come back. The Veth, they'll bring more ships next time. A lot more, I know. We can't fight them again. Not like this, I know. So what do we do? Dohan looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Veth were licking their wounds and planning revenge. Somewhere out there, other species were suffering under their rule. Somewhere out there, beings who had never known hope were waiting for someone to show them that resistance was possible. We heal, he said. We repair. And then we find out if anyone else is ready to stand up. It was a crazy plan. It was probably impossible. But they were human. Impossible was what they did. The story spread like fire through dry grass. It began with the Orani survivors, who sent messages to every world they could reach. They told of the burning. They told of the terror. And then they told of the ship. The single, damaged, impossibly brave human ship that had challenged 17 Veth warships and one. At first, no one believed it. The Veth were invincible. Everyone knew this. It was the fundamental truth of the galaxy, as certain as the laws of physics. Species that fought the Veth died. Species that surrendered were enslaved. There were no other options. But the Orani had recordings. They showed the battle from the planet's surface. They showed the Taigok dancing through Veth fire. They showed Veth ships exploding. They showed the moment when the greatest terror in the galaxy turned and ran from one small vessel The recording spread. World to world. System to system. Species to species. And something changed. In the Telos cluster. A species called the Moran had been paying tribute to the Veth for 800 years. They gave half of everything they produced. Half their food, half their resources, half their children, taken to serve as slaves. When the Moran Council watched the recordings, they sat in silence for a long time. Is this real? The eldest counselor asked. Can this be real? It appears to be authentic, the science advisor replied. A single ship, damaged, outgunned, and they fought anyway. Why? Why would anyone do such a thing? No one had an answer. But that night, for the first time in 8 centuries, the Moran did not send their tribute ship. They sent a message instead. We will pay no more. In the Ash Nebula, 3 civilizations had been enemies for generations. Old hatreds, old wars, old wounds that would never heal. They had spent so much energy fighting each other that they had nothing left to resist the Veth. But now, representatives from all 3 species sat in the same room. They watched the recordings together. They saw the human ship charge into impossible odds. They heard the human captain's words. We cannot look away from evil. The oldest representative, a being who had lost 2 sons to the species sitting across from him, spoke first. Perhaps, he said slowly, we have been fighting the wrong enemy. The alliance that formed that day would never have seemed possible before. But the impossible had become real. A single ship had proved it. On 100 worlds, in 1,000 languages, beings asked the same dangerous question. What if we fought back? The Taiguk had been repaired by the Orani. It was not a perfect repair. The ship still bore its scars, its wounds, its marks of battle. But it could fly again. It could fight again. And Captain Dowan had decided not to go home. Earth would receive their message eventually. Help would come someday. But there were people suffering now. There were voices crying out now. And Dowan could not turn away from them. So the Taiguk became something new. Not a military vessel. Not a vessel. Not an exploration ship. Something that had never existed before. A symbol. They traveled from system to system, answering distress calls that no one else would answer. They protected convoys of refugees. They faced down Veth patrol ships. They never saw glory. They never asked for payment. They simply helped. The stories multiplied. A ship appeared from nowhere. A ship that could not be stopped. A ship crewed by strange beings who seemed to feel the pain of others as if it were their own. They called them many things. The Ghost Ship, the Wandering Guard, the Hope, but mostly they called them humans. 6 months after the Battle of Kela Prime, the Veth assembled their response. 40 warships. Their largest fleet in centuries. Enough firepower to crack a planet apart. They returned to the Keller system, determined to erase the shame of their defeat, to prove that the old order still ruled the galaxy. The Taiguk was waiting for them, but it was not alone. 300 ships hung in formation around the battered human vessel. They came from 17 different species. Some were warships, sleek and powerful. Some were converted freighters, their cargo holds replaced with weapons. Some were little more than shuttles held together by determination and hope. They had come from across the galaxy. Former enemies who now stood side by side. Slaves who had broken their chains. Survivors who had found the courage to stop running. All because of a story. All because one ship had refused to look away. On the bridge of the Taiguk, Captain Dowan looked at the fleet that had gathered behind him. He felt something in his chest that he had not felt in a very long time. Pride. Not for himself. For all of them. Open a channel, he said. All frequencies. Yuna smiled. Channel open, Captain. Dowan straightened in his chair. He was 53 years old. He was tired. He was scarred. but he had never felt more alive. This is Captain Dowan of the Earth vessel Taiguk to the Veth Dominion fleet. You have entered protected space. Leave now, and we will not follow you. Stay, and we will end your empire today. On the Veth flagship, the commander stared at his sensor readings. 300 ships, 17 species, civilizations that had never cooperated before, flying in formation behind a single human vessel. Impossible, he whispered. How? How did this happen? His tactical officer had no answer. The calculations made no sense. The galaxy was not supposed to work this way. Fear was supposed to rule. Submission was supposed to be inevitable. One small ship was not supposed to change everything, but it had. On the Taiguk, Hana looked at Sunho. Do you think we can win? She asked quietly. The old engineer watched the fleet arrayed behind them. Ships from worlds he had never heard of. Beings who had crossed the galaxy because they believed in something larger than themselves. I think, he said slowly, that we already have. Whatever happens today, we already have. We showed them that they don't have to be afraid anymore. We showed them that standing together is possible. Even if we lose this battle, that idea will never die. The Veth commander made his decision. His fleet powered up their weapons. Perhaps they could still win through force. Perhaps they could crush this rebellion and restore the old order. Perhaps. Captain Dohan gave the order, and 300 ships, led by 412 tired, wounded, stubborn humans, surged forward. They were not fighting for territory. They were not fighting for resources. They were not fighting for power. They were fighting for something the Veth had never understood and could never defeat. They were fighting for each other. The battle that followed would be remembered for 1,000 years. It would be sung about on 100 worlds. It would become the story that children heard before sleep. The story that reminded them that evil could be stopped, that courage could make a difference, that one voice crying in the darkness could start an avalanche. The galaxy had been ruled by fear for 3,000 years. That rule ended when a battered ship heard scream in the void and refused to look away, and nothing would ever be the same again.